For decades, the story we've all heard about India and Pakistan is one of rivalry, of isolation. But what if the biggest threat they face isn't actually each other? What if it's a shared weakness? And what if, inside that weakness, there's a surprising key to a much more stable future? Okay, let's get into this, because we're going to explore how one single crisis revealed a hidden economic link, and maybe, just maybe, a radical new path to peace.
So our story kicks off not with some border dispute, but with a sudden, kind of catastrophic event that sent shockwaves through both countries at the exact same time. A real moment of shared crisis. And really, the whole crisis boiled down to this one question. The choke point we're talking about is the Strait of Hormuz, a tiny little waterway that, as it turns out, is the economic jugular for both India and Pakistan. And the scale of this dependency is just wow. It's what's so critical here. For India, a massive 80% of its natural gas and 40% of its oil flows through this one single passage. I mean, think about that. A disruption here isn't just an inconvenience. It's a full-blown national security crisis. And here's the kicker. Pakistan is in the exact same boat. An incredible 81% of its oil supply relies on that very same, very vulnerable strait. All of a sudden, these two historic rivals found themselves staring down the barrel of the exact same existential economic threat. And the fallout? Oh, it was immediate, and it was brutal, and it went way beyond just energy. Freight costs shot up by 90%. War insurance for a single trip through the strait hit $1.2 million. Stock markets tanked, currencies weakened. Their entire economies were basically paralyzed, side by side. So, this shared disaster actually revealed something pretty fascinating. While they were trying so hard to be politically isolated, they were already connected economically, just in the most backward, inefficient way you could possibly imagine. This right here, this is the first big aha moment of this whole story. Officially, the policy was all about strategic isolation, right? Keep direct trade limited so you don't have to depend on your rival. But what was actually happening? A massive $10 billion informal trade network, with everything being routed inefficiently through places like the UAE. And this quote just nails it. It perfectly captures how absurd the whole situation was. The economic pull was so strong that it just found a way around all the political roadblocks. But it ended up costing everyone involved way, way more. And this gets us to the really core strategic mistake they'd been making for decades. The very thing they were trying to prevent, this crisis proved they had actually created for themselves. Let's just, walk through the logic here. The goal was simple. Don't depend on each other. So the action they took was to reroute everything. But the results? Well, they ended up paying way more for goods and, crucially, were still exposed to the exact same global shocks, just like the Hormuz crisis showed us all. So it's this amazing paradox, isn't it? In their attempt to insulate themselves from each other, they actually made themselves more fragile, more vulnerable to the rest of the world. Their whole policy of isolation was, at the end of the day, an act of economic self-sabotage. Okay, so if isolation was a massive failure, what's the alternative? This brings us to the central idea of this whole explainer. What if we reframe trade not as a weakness, but as a really powerful strategy for peace? The main idea is something called trade interdependence, and it's actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. When your economies are tangled up together, the cost of going to war becomes so ridiculously high for both sides that staying stable becomes the most logical, most profitable choice for everybody. And hey, this isn't just some academic theory. Just look at China and India. Their political disputes and border tensions are sky high, we all know that. And yet their bilateral trade is over $127 billion. Why? Because the trade isn't about being friends. It's a strategic necessity that acts like a huge emergency brake on open conflict. History totally backs this up. I mean, think about it. At the very height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union and Western Europe built these enormous gas pipelines connecting their economies. Later on, the Arab gas pipeline connected historic rivals in the Middle East. The pattern is pretty clear. Building shared infrastructure can create stability long before you ever get to a place of political trust. So, how do we actually make this happen? This isn't just a thought experiment. There are real, concrete projects sitting on the table right now that could build this kind of resilient, interconnected future. And the pressure is on. I mean, just take the Iran-Pakistan pipeline. Delays are already putting Pakistan on the hook for a potential $18 billion penalty.
That's a staggering number. The cost of just sitting around and doing nothing is really starting to pile up. But the vision here is so much bigger. Imagine extending that pipeline all the way to India, creating what they call the IPI corridor, or finally completing the TAPI pipeline from Central Asia. This stuff would mean cheaper energy, it would generate transit fees, and most importantly, it would directly solve the problem we started with by reducing that shared dependency on the Strait of Hormuz. And if you look even further ahead, the strategy could evolve. You could take the existing China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, and transform it from just a transport route into a hub for a regional clean energy grid, sharing solar power and creating a truly integrated and sustainable future. So, what does this all mean? When you put it all together, what's the single biggest lesson we can learn from this shared crisis? Let's try and wrap it all up. Well, the key takeaway is that we need to completely redefine what security even means. In the world we live in today, true security isn't just about how many tanks and jets you have. It's about building resilient economies that can actually handle these global shocks. And trying to go it alone, isolationism, well, that's the enemy of resilience. And this is the thought I really want to leave you with. When you're just rivals, you really only have an interest in seeing the other side fail. But the moment you become economically interdependent, you become stakeholders. Now, all of a sudden, you have a direct, vested interest in each other's stability and success. And that, well, that changes absolutely everything.